We're online.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City Works and Assets Committee meeting on the 11th of May 2022. We've become very resourceful with our online attendance, as we've got a few councillors unwell. So I now declare the meeting open at 7:34 p.m. For community who are listening, some of the councillors, including myself, are participating in the meeting remotely. So along with Councillor Fardell and Councillor Jansen. So everyone is reminded to conduct themselves in a polite and professional manner during this meeting, and I ask that councillors observe the requirements under the Code of Meeting Practice for this particular meeting. I also ask councillors who are participating remotely via Teams, please keep your microphone muted and use the hand icon if you wish to speak, and just announce your name when speaking. All right, I'd also just like to remind everyone that this recording is an official record of council, may be made available to persons upon request in accordance with the Government Information Public Access Act 2009. No other recordings are permitted. I'll start by acknowledging country. Just like to pay our respects to the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, of the Gadigal and Bidjigal clans, and pay our respect to elders past and present. I have two apologies that have been received. So apologies have been received from Councillor McDougall and Councillor Tsounis. Are there any other apologies? Just in case I can't see the whole room. All right, would someone like to move that they be accepted? Moved Councillor Barlow, seconded Councillor Jansen. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carried. So the procedural, we'll just move the procedural motion as well, in accordance with the requirements Code of Meeting Practice, to formally allow myself and councillors to attend by audiovisual link. I therefore move that the councillors in attendance tonight's meeting by audiovisual link be permitted to do so. Is there a seconder? Second, Councillor Fardell. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare that carried. Item number 3 is disclosures of interest. Thank you for councillors who have put those in prior, so they can be shown on the screen. So councillors have disclosed an interest in some items. So it appears that Councillor Jansen, Councillor Douglas and myself have disclosed an interest in CWA 22.009 due to us attending an event that was hosted at that venue. I will actually exit the chair because the charity that I'm involved in, that was actually the venue of a fundraiser for that charity. So I will exit the chair for that item, and Councillor Jansen will take over the chair for that item. Are there any further disclosures?
Madam Mayor, I have an additional disclosure just on the same item, but mine's slightly different to yours, which I have submitted to the business papers. Do you want me to read it out? I declare a non-pecuniary, less than significant conflict of interest item on the basis of perception in regards to the licensee for the Lassans Restaurant's son-in-law, Ilias Sourtzis, preference me as his third preference in the council elections on December 4th, 2021, and I'll not be in the room for the discussion and vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Are there any further disclosures?
I think I should make a disclosure that I was at that event at the Brighton Baths Amenities building, and that I have a non-pecuniary, non-significant interest, and I will stay in the meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Werner. Any others? Okay. Thank you, councillors. The disclosures will be noted in the minutes. We now move to the minutes of the previous confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. So they're the minutes of the City Works and Assets Committee meeting on the 13th of April 2022, that the committee notes the minutes of the City Works and Assets Committee meeting on 13th of April be confirmed as a true record of proceedings. Can I ask two councillors who are present at the meeting to move and second the confirmation of minutes? Moved. Councillor Barlow, are you happy to do that? I can't hear, sorry. I just need the microphone.
I'll move the confirmation of the minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Seconded. Councillor Douglas, are you happy to second?
I wasn't actually in attendance.
You weren't there, yeah. Councillor Jansen? Thank you. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? I declare the minutes confirmed. Okay, business arising. So 4.2 is business arising that the committee notes that the minutes of the committee meeting were received and the recommendations therein were adopted by the council at its meeting of the 27th of April, with the exception of item numbers, and they should be on the screen there. So there were 3 items there that, so that's just for council to receive and note. Okay, well, now there is nobody for the public forum, so nobody's applied to speak for this meeting, so we'll move to the reports. So the first report, sorry, let me change screens. The first item is 0.007, which is the proposed classification of affordable housing properties at East Gardens as operational land. There is a recommendation before us. Do I have a mover and a seconder?
I'll move it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Moved Councillor Barlow, seconded, was that Councillor Douglas?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone like to speak to the item?
I'll just make the comment that it's great to see us negotiating affordable housing, which is the only way you can provide it, is the developer has to do it, but it's a great outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Any further speakers? Okay, then there being no further discussion, I put the recommendation on the screen, moved by Councillor Barlow and Councillor Douglas. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to the second item. Sorry. I think I need dual screens here. So the second item, which is 0.008, so this is the Lrci Phase 3 funding recommendations. And so there are 3 recommendations. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Jansen, seconded Councillor Fardell. All those in, sorry, are there any speakers?
I just wanted to know that the Bexley Hard Court facility, just say, is it just a proposal to make it? I just wanted to know what it was about.
Well, refer to the appropriate officer. please.
Thank you, Chair. The Bexley High Court facility is essentially a renewal of the existing Bexley Tennis Courts facility. So it will reinvigorate that facility, which has been sitting there derelict for a number of years. It will provide capacity to reincorporate tennis and had flexibility to apply for other sports. So in addition to tennis.
Will be sort of multi-purpose, as in more than one use, so,
It will have flexibility to support more
Yeah.
than tennis.
okay.
Are there any further discussion?
Councillor Jansen, I think this is a good opportunity to complete some projects where we don't have already allocated funding. So I was happy to see some of these projects coming through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen. Any further discussion? All right, therefore I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Aye. I declare it carried. The next item is point 009, which is the Brighton Baths Amenities Building. So I will leave the meeting and hand over the chair to Councillor Jansen. Mr. Soot, will you please text me when I need to come back online? Thank you.
Thank you. Can someone let me know when both councillors have departed?
Am I going to move it, am I?
Councillor Jansen.
She's left.
Okay. There's an officer recommendation before us in relation to CW 22.009. Do I have a mover and a seconder?
Yes, I'll move.
Councillor Fardell moving and
No, I'll second it.
seconded
Councillor
by
Barlow.
Councillor Barlow. Is there any further discussion?
Wondering if we can actually go and have a discussion in confidential. Just there's questions there to be asked. I don't know. I think I'd be
Is
happy-
that can we have a summary of the report, because I believe this is advice on next steps and due process. So I feel like we've already had that
Okay, no, it's fine.
discussion as per the last meeting. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. Is there a so
It's Councillor Morrissey. Can I ask a question? So I'm
yes,
making
go
a
ahead,
quorum
Councillor
at this
Morrissey.
point. Thank you. Just if it is confidential, tell me that's how. Can you just give us a high level layman's terms? So at last council meeting, the lessee was supposed to sign a deed. That didn't happen. Can you give us a high level as to what the next steps are without requiring to go into confidential? Just and potentially timing of that, because I note that it says it's going to come to the next committee. Fantastic, but you know, what happens in the interim? What can we expect to see next time?
So through the chair, at the last committee meeting, the committee considered a report that outlined a position that the tenant put forward on a payment plan and a position that council had formed in response to that payment plan. Attached to that was a time frame for the tenant to agree to that payment plan, and where we are at this point in time is that we don't have an agreement in place by that time frame. So what the next steps involve, the tenant has indicated they want to enact the dispute resolution process under the lease agreement. Council are proposing to follow that same process and are forming the formal notice as such that will go to the tenant. So in terms of next steps and timeframes, what the lease requires is the parties to come together and try and work through their differences, and they can employ after 21 days a mediator to also try and aid and assist that process. There are no specific timeframes around how long that might be, other than after 21 days they can employ a mediator to assist. So this report centres on advising the committee that we're seeking to formally enact that process to try and work through to get to a resolution and agree a payment plan and agree a position on other things that are in discussion at the moment, and they centre around maintenance works on the building. So as a general summary, that's what the report is seeking to outline.
Thanks. And just a follow-up, is the lessee suggested a willingness to pay, even if you drew a line and said, let's talk about the arrears, are they still going to pay the rent that's due for this month, or are they just going to stop paying subject to this clause?
So, again, through the chair, without going too far into items that might be viewed as being confidential, the tenant hasn't indicated that they'll stop paying rent, nor would we expect that they will stop paying rent. There's nothing under the lease agreement that would stay rent obligations while that process is occurring. It's effectively a best attempt by both parties to try and work through it while the lease still continues to run its course.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that summary, and thank you, Councillor Morrissey. Is there any further discussion, councillors?
Councillor Sedrak, Madam Chair, can I also ask a further question, please?
Yes, Councillor Sedrak, go ahead.
Thank you for that brief summary. Do we have to enter this 21-day negotiation process? Through you, Chair.
Through the chair, there was no obligation for either party to go through the process, but it is something that is outlined in the lease and something that is useful for both council and the tenant to work through to try and get to a resolution on this point. But certainly it's in the lease. Either party can cease that mediation process at any point in time, but it's definitely a tool that would be beneficial to both parties to work through.
And just a follow-up question. So I know can you release some of those details about what we're asking for and what he's willing and what we're willing, or that's confidential?
Yeah, through the chair. Look, the specifics of what they're proposing in terms of a payment plan and what council's position would be in response to that would be treated as confidential. But what we can say is that we're not at a point that we're necessarily agreed on what that payment plan would look like.
Sorry, just last question. After in your professional opinion, I guess, and maybe someone else can also assist, do you think we're going to get to somewhere positive after 21 days? I know it's a very...
No, look.
I guess what I'm trying to get at, this issue has been going on for a long time. It's quite sensitive for council, it's quite sensitive for the tenants, quite sensitive for Bayside, and especially in particular Ward 5, Brighton Le Sands. There's a lot vested on this property for a long time. Everyone's got an opinion about it. And I think, to be fair to the tenant as well as council, we really need to knot this out and make sure we have a positive outcome. I mean, how long can this go on for? And I'm not against the tenant, nor am I against council. I'm just trying to get to a resolution. And if we could see something at the end of 21 days, then we're rest assured a little bit. If we're not, then I think we need to put some of this stuff to the table and say, what's going on? And what's the best solution?
Thank you, Councillor Sedrak. I believe the officer recommendation is based on the legal advice that was contained in the attachments under the closed cover. So this is, the legal team have been consulted, so the dispute clause has been enacted. So I think at this stage, this is our steps are, as mentioned, based on legal advice. Can the officer correct me if I'm wrong?
Through the chair, that is correct. What I would just add to what's been said already is that under the dispute resolution clause within both the restaurant and the kiosk lease, the 21 days for seeking to negotiate a resolution of the disputes is mandatory now. The process of how a mediation is conducted is up to the parties to work out. If we are wanting to discuss anything more around it, I would say that ought to be done in confidential session, because we're really then getting into our strategy and tactics for that negotiation process.
Thank you to legal counsel for that advice. Based on that further advice, is there any additional questions by councillors? So I'll put the officer recommendation in front of you forward. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Officer recommendation is carried. At this stage, we'll ask Councillor Douglas and Councillor Curry to rejoin the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen. We'll now move to the final item, which is the .010, which is the Barton Park footbridge. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Barlow, seconded Councillor Jansen. Are there any speakers to this item?
Yes, I do. I'm just sitting down. I have a few questions. I'm really excited to see this footbridge. I use this every day, and it is a bit terrifying when you read what you can't take the weight of. I do have some questions though around two things. What is the alternative route going to be during the construction?
The new bridge will actually be constructed while the existing one is in place, so there'll be no interruption in terms of rerouting of the cyclists.
So then the original bridge will be demolished?
That's correct, yes.
So is there a slight deviation then from the current pathway?
Yeah, in the attachment there was a small presentation that just showed where the location was, and it's slightly to the west of the existing bridge.
Okay. All right.
On the slide that's titled Preliminary Design, it just shows it slightly off. Which page is that? That is...
Oh, okay. Sorry, I must be looking at the wrong attachment. The other question I had was, I noticed in the attachment that I was looking at that the pathway from the north is going to be widened quite significantly, which it says will be a good amenity for future use. I just wanted to make a suggestion that when that comes to finalising that we have a separation between cyclists and pedestrians on that approach.
That's something that's been looking at as part of Barton Park, having the separation of the two, so this will be a great link.
Say that again.
It will be a good link to have from the Barton Park project, which actually has the separation of cyclists and pedestrians, so the same can happen at the riverine most northern end.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to go forward, because we've had a lot of congestion on our coastal bike path, and I know that e-scooters are coming in, and we are going to have more and more people using that active transport route, so separating out the pedestrians and the wheels is I think a long-term benefit to the community. Thank you. They're my questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Are there any further questions? All right, we have a recommendation in front of us. All those in favour say aye.
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 Against? I declare it carried. There being no further items, I declare the meeting closed at 7:58 p.m. Thank you, everybody.